Well, good afternoon and welcome back to Truth Worth Living, where we seek to understand God's Word so we can live in God's will. Thomas J. DeLong, who's a professor at Harvard Business School, studies what he calls HNAPs. That's High Need for Achievement Professionals. And through his studies, he's identified what he calls the comparison obsession. Through interviews with 500 highly successful lawyers, doctors, Wall Street analysts, and other executive level professionals, he found, listen to this, that over 80% of them questioned their own success while referencing the name of at least one other peer who they felt had been more successful. For instance, one former student who holds an MBA from Harvard and a terrific job at a Fortune 500 company admitted to going into a tailspin after reading an alumni newsletter that highlighted a classmate who had just been named vice president of a Fortune 100 company. From that moment on, she could barely hold a conversation without bemoaning her achievements, and on more than one occasion, she told others she felt like a total failure. Now, despite the fact that the individuals he interviewed are considered the best and brightest in their fields, the most successful, he found that most of them are hampered by what he calls a comparing reflex. That reflex torpedoes their professional and personal lives. He concluded that when their success is based upon external rather than internal criteria, commitment to the job and personal satisfaction in the work, in their life and work, are greatly diminished. Now, we shouldn't really be surprised. 3,000 years before Professor DeLong, the teacher in Ecclesiastes made the exact same observation. He didn't identify the problem with the fancy phrase comparing reflex. He used another word that we are much more familiar with. Ecclesiastes 4:4 says, "And I saw that all toil and all achievement spring from one person's envy of another. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind." Work and achievement are meaningless when they spring from envy. If we're driven to win because someone else is winning, we will never be satisfied because there's always going to be someone ahead of us in the race. He goes on to demonstrate this problem of envy achievement by telling a short story, a really short story, about a man who only lived to win. Ecclesiastes 4:7-8 say, "Again I saw something meaningless under the sun. There was a man all alone. He had neither son nor brother. There was no end to his toil, yet his eyes were not content with his wealth. 'For whom am I toiling?' he asked, 'and why am I depriving myself of enjoyment?' This too is meaningless, a miserable business." Now, this man's circumstances spell out the primary problem with the comparing reflex. It is always isolating. This tycoon was consumed with envy. His obsession with working to win left him all alone. There was no wife, no kids, no blood kin to bless with his estate, and he had no friends. His life consisted of three things: great piles of work, great piles of wealth, and overwhelming discontent. At some point he asked himself, what's it all for? I have no one to share my success with, and because of envy, I can't even enjoy myself. It was indeed a miserable business. Now, when we read this passage, we're tempted to focus on his focus on work and achievement being the problem. But we shouldn't. We're actually made for both. The real issue is the envy that leads to isolation, because isolation is detrimental to our well-being. We are actually created for community. You remember in the garden, even before sin entered the picture, God identified one problem. Adam was alone. So what did he do? He created Eve. But we know what happened. Sin corrupted their community. And when we look at their story, we might say that the fall unleashed the comparing reflex. Adam and Eve compared their bodies and covered up. Cain compared himself with Abel and killed him, and this poor man in Ecclesiastes compared his work to some unidentified winner, and he cut himself off from the community for which he was created. The teacher exhorts us not to make the same mistake. Listen to Ecclesiastes 4, 9 through 12. Two are better than one, because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Also, if two lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. Now, the picture here is of two people traveling from one place to another on business. They are partners, not in competition, but in community, and they're better off for it. In community, troubles are shared and joys are doubled. The truth is that working for community is a win, and that is truth worth living. Hope you guys are having a great day. I appreciate you joining me. May God bless you and keep you and cause his face to shine upon you and give you peace.